Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Hollywood Morgue podcast. How's everybody doing today? It's a pretty day. It's nighttime, though. Um, how's everybody doing today? As you can see from the title, we're going to talk about gore horror. Movies that are really extreme and high on the either the body count or just extremely gory. But before we get into that, um, I would like to acknowledge a certain actor who has since passed on, um, who's contributed to Hollywood and stuff like that. Hence the name, the Hollywood Mark Podcast. We want to recognize maybe some well-known and unknown faces of Hollywood. But today we're going to talk about Abe Vigoda. Abe Vigoda, uh, classic actor, did a lot of mobster movies, did a lot of Coppola movies. For any kids who grew up in the '90s, you might know him from Good Burger. He was the old man who was the fry cook in Good Burger. So if you remember watching that movie, he's that guy. But for your parents and possibly your grandparents, uh, it would be the Godfather movies. It would be like Scarface and stuff like that. Very classic, well-known actor, and I believe he passed away not too long ago. So yeah, just want to recognize him, thank him for his contributions to Hollywood, and you know much rest in peace to the family and my condolences. But anyway, we're gonna talk about gore horror, and for many of you, a lot of people, that's what draws them in. The horror genre, it's so taboo, and the seeing all this disgusting, dirty, nasty stuff, it kind of draws people in. Um, Roger Corman, very, popular for doing gore in his movies. Very cheap, obviously. Um, People like Greg Nicotero and Tom Savini. Tom Savini made a fairly gory movie, and Greg Nicotero, obviously, he does the effects for. Uh, I'm trying to think of it. I can't even think of it. The Walking Dead. He does the effects for The Walking Dead. Tom Savini did the effects for Day of the Dead, where they actually used real life horse guts and uh, cow intestines. Very grisly, nasty stuff, but it's for art and it looks real. That's because it is real. Now, obviously, uh, people tend to overuse it, and which can be unsettling. For a lot of people, it is for a lot of movies who tend to go that route can be very effective. Movies like The Thing, The Thing is not a physical. Really, we don't really know what it is. It's an entity that takes form of other people, and these other people, when you mix this alien life form with the natural, human body, you get different kinds of gore. You get like green, this green, milky, nasty substance, but you also get like real life, like blood. Like in one of the opening scenes, one of the first gore scenes is where the dog's face. Spoiler alert, I guess. But if you haven't seen The Thing, 1981, 80, 82, or something like that. If you haven't seen it, yeah, it's right here. If you haven't seen it, there's a scene where a dog, his face splits open, and it's just disgusting. And it's obviously it's a puppet, but that's the great goodness of effects and things like that. Is like it looks real, um, but these people and the people who did the effects on it, they were able to make it look like it was an actual dog. And when the other effects, the iconic scene where he's on the table and he's doing the defibrillator scene, and the guy bites his arms off. They actually used a real life um, amputee for that scene. I think they had the guy with the hands, and he's like holding his hands up like he got his arms ripped off. But really, that was the amputee, and they believe they put a mask over the actor to make it look like he was screaming, and obviously they did the actual actor for the close-ups. But a real nice, real cool scene is where they're in the room and they're like trying to figure out whose blood was the thing, or who's the thing or whatever. And the guy's face just like splits open, and it's just disgusting and bloody, and it's amazing. Um, there are movies that kind of they tend to it lets you know right away what it is. Hellraiser, obviously the advertising for Hellraiser is like the sado masochistic torture sexual kind of thing, and they let you know it right away. But you watch the movies, like in the first scene of Hellraiser, he's literally, this guy's literally his face is ripped apart from his body and everything, and the awesome when the guy bleeds on the floor and he starts, you know, reincarnating into back his old self. The transformation scene, I mean, that looks awesome. It's amazing how they did the effects. I believe they took a life mold of the actual actor and they melted it, or it was some really cool effect that they did, and it was just really cool how they did it, and the way they made the skeleton look, and they made the corpse look before it was fully formed, and yeah, no, the effects, they are convincing. Like when you see, there's some that are like obviously bad, with the blood, and the blood has changed. It's had its own problems with like the MPAA and stuff like that. They Tarantino has a very famous line where he says, "The MPAA is not like they don't like gore or blood; it's they don't like the color red." And I think that's true, because when you have the color red, that symbols blood and everything, and it's kind of gross looking. Um, but when you have green or black or something like that, it kind of takes that kind of ewiness away. Like the green, oh, it's like an alien or something like that. Um, but it's just a way for people to work around that issue of getting a movie distributed by a certain person, or to get it passed by the MPAA so it doesn't get an NC-17. Um, so like R is like 17 and up, or however places. I guess that's at a discretion of the movie theater, but I think R is like 18 up, and NC-17s you got to be. I'm not really sure about NC-17, but if you watch a movie that's NC-17 or labeled NC-17, then it's probably pretty bad. Um, I can't think of any offhand. I actually believe the only NC-17 movie that I haven't watched, but Bad Lieutenant, not the one with Nicolas Cage, mind you, the one with Harvey Keitel. I believe that movie was NC-17, but it's not like it has a bunch of blood and stuff in it. It's just the content of the movie is very graphic and disturbing, and um, doesn't sit well with people, and it includes murder and rape and stuff like that. So I believe Last House on the Left, or one of those famous grindhouse movies, either in Last House on the Left or um, I Spit on Your Grave, was like NC-17, so they had to cut it down. But all those movies are pretty graphic in their own right, especially, you know, I Spit on Your Grave. Last House on the Left, maybe for back then, it was pretty. It's intense. No, the movie is intense and disturbing, but it's more tame than I Spit on Your Grave. A scene, some of it's kind of implied, like the scene where the guy has his hands tied behind his back, and the mom, she's giving him the old eggplant surprise, you know, and then she bites it off and everything. You never see any of the gore, like you never see anything. It's implied, which is perfectly fine. Um, well, then you get movies that are like really extremely low budget. Like Last House on the Left was low budget. But then you get movies that they try to go for the big effects and the blood and guts and everything. Movies like Piranha, whose piranha effects are pretty bad, but they make that up in gore, like cutting a woman's face off, ripping a woman's skull. Hair gets tied up in one of the propellers and it gets ripped from her head. Very intense stuff like that. Um, but a lot of the gore is like in the water. So like they pour the red, they put either the fake blood or the coloring and stuff like that in the water, and so it makes it look like there's more carnage than it is, which is how studios get around that. Um, and you get movies that are like it's also another movie that's implied. I had thought Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Always hear Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's got to be pretty rough, pretty gory, and stuff like that. But going back and watching it, the movie's actually pretty tame. The later sequels are much worse. I believe some of the newer ones. I say the newer ones, the ones that came out in the early 2000s were actually much worse than the original. Um, and I guess they probably didn't have the budget. But could you imagine working in with all the? It's really hot. You're doing an indie movie. It's hot. You're in Texas, and you're filming a movie, and you get all this fake blood. Like a lot of movies, I believe in the Day of the Dead, where they're ripping that guy up, when they're ripping Captain Rhodes up. He's like, there's like cow intestines and stuff like that, and so they're ripping him up, but um, like there's that smell of the cow intestines is like just lingering in there. So they rip this guy up, and they said they had people throw up on the set. Hello, Alan. How are you doing today? I was trying to get Doc on, but I guess he's not here. Or if he is here, try to shoot him a message. Um, yeah, this is something that Doc he wanted to talk about was gore horror. Um, so, but yeah, no movies that use practical um, effects that are gore effects. They look convincing. Like there's a you could tell the difference between a CGI CGI blood and real blood. A movie where I really noticed the CGI blood that was pretty bad was the Expendables movie. Although not explicitly gory, but you could tell the difference between the CG blood and the real blood in other movies. Um, and you also had movies like Hammer. Hammer was considered extremely gory for the time when it came out in the 50s. It was in color, you know, and you have the blood, and obviously the blood is red and everything, so they had to show it, but they didn't use how like people normally do it now. They use like corn syrup and food coloring, so they would use like stage makeup, so it almost looked like paint, and which is what Tim Burton, he used that kind of that almost paint like stage blood for his movie Sweeney Todd, uh, and everything, because it kind of has that Hammer Dracula kind of expressionist feel that they were going with. But the Hammer movies did a lot better than Sweeney Todd. Um, but even now, um, movies, especially low budget movies, like you see that their effects, like it's usually like a comedy. Um, they take their crap, what they have on a low budget, and they could put it into some really good looking gore effects. I think it's one of the most easiest things to recreate. Like you can create intestines and stuff like that fairly easy, um, with a lot of tutorials and stuff you see on YouTube, and uh, just other outlets. Um, like, and watching old YouTube videos, about like movie reviews and behind the scenes and stuff like that helps too. The movie The Mutilator, which sounds extremely graphic and everything, doesn't have a whole lot of graphic scenes. Like there's some good kills and everything, but it's not extremely graphic. But in the movie, they're using blood. I say squibs, but people get hurt. They're supposed to show like they get blood on them, but they're using literally using condoms filled with fake blood, and so that was the extent of their fancy technology, was condoms filled with fake blood. But I guess whatever looks real, right? And they teach you, like, you watch videos on YouTube how to make a squib, with an air compressor and stuff like that. Um, it teaches you that you don't put the powder in there because the powder can be dangerous and it can hurt you. So you don't want to use like the gunpowder and stuff like that, like they use on sets. And they teach you all that stuff, which is fantastic. It's good for people who are into making indie films and things like that. Um, yeah, the MPAA. I talked about it when we were talking about um, Tarantino and everything. They did a movie from that commentary, from Dusk Till Dawn is where that commentary came from. From Dusk Till Dawn, I mean, it's with Tarantino and George Clooney, and they fight vampires. And the vampires, they they're almost like serpent-like creatures, and some of them have fake blood, and some of them have green blood. I've seen many movies where people bleed black blood, which I don't mind the black blood. I think stylistically it looks really cool. Um, in The Fifth Element, everybody is like a purple black blood, and everybody that gets they're about to get hurt or die, and they bleed black blood. I just thought it looks stylistically, it looks cool. All right, Alan. Thank you. I hope not. He wanted to do this, so maybe I have to let him text him in advance next time. Doc's been working really hard on his bar that he has, which is fantastic. Go to his Twitter. I'll put it in the description. Um, when this live goes up, if you watch it back, I'll put his links in the description so you can go check those out. Um, but yeah, no, gore in movies has definitely gotten a lot better over the years. Um, but even back then, even like back in the 30s, they were doing some pretty wacky stuff. They they're taking goat eyeballs, animal eyeballs, and like putting needles through them to make it look like a person's eyeball. And I forget what movie that's from, but stuff like that, graphic. People, there's like a scene with like a surgery. They're like removing a girl's face. Obviously it's like a prosthetic, but for back then, it's all black and white. Um, and I get, for some people who haven't seen anything like that in the theaters before, they're seeing that for the first time. They're like, wow, that looks great. Um, I'm trying to think movies that are like extremely gory. Um, Movies that don't really are not really about the gore, or really horror movies. They have some intense gore. Movies like RoboCop. I remember the first time I saw RoboCop, and it was pretty graphic. I think, yeah, pretty pretty graphic. Where he gets shot by Ed 209 at the beginning of the movie, and he gets shot like a bunch of squibs and everything on his body. And seeing the outtakes of that is hilarious. With the guy, he gets shot. He's getting shot. He's like bah, 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 and everything, and then he like falls back on the table and he gets shot some more in the unrated cut. Um, and then you see at the behind the scenes, he just gets up off the table. He's like, all right, you know, it's it's a pretty good scene. Um, One of the goriest movies of all time um, was a movie called Dead Alive, or Brain Dead, and it has several aspects of the gore about it. People getting their hands cut off, they're getting their head decapitated. Gross out horror. That a lot of movies they want to do that. Movies that are particularly I can't even speak right now, but movies that like to do that, usually low budget movies. I love big budget movies. Movies like Trauma. Um, no offense to like Lloyd Kaufman and stuff like that. But several of his movies really go on the, you know, nasty, gross out horror and stuff like that. And they use a lot of green blood, obviously because they can't use the red blood because completely it would be completely uh, no, you can't have this anywhere. It's too graphic and stuff like that. Uh, movies that that are so gory or so graphic that they've had like lawsuits um, put on them. Movies like Cannibal Holocaust. Cannibal Holocaust was an Italian-made movie. It looks like almost like the Blair Witch Project before the Blair Witch Project, and it was extremely graphic, extremely bloody. I don't really know extremely bloody, but it does show animal violence, and it shows a lot of workers in the movie because it's supposed to be like this film crew. They go to this village and they get killed. They get eaten by these cannibals. And movies they talk about that like The Green Inferno, and although it doesn't show any gory stuff, King Kong, not the 1930s 1950s version, the 2005 version. They show the savages attacking the crew of the ship, and you see them just beat these people with clubs and all the skulls and everything. And although it's not extremely explicit, the um, the you know I'm trying to think of the right word. I said it earlier. The implication of gore and is just even scarier than actually seeing people getting their heads split open. Just seeing the skulls and just piles and piles of skulls. In some movies, it's not as bad. Like you watch like The Goonies, it's more for like laughs. But like this movie, it's like serious and intense, and they're in an intense situation. Um, it's very unsettling to say the least. The the foundation of gore was not to make people feel uneasy, but like just to show a little bit more to see what people can get away with. And there are movies that they get away with it a lot easier now, but a lot of it doesn't look good. Um, you know, a lot of the people insist on using CGI to do things. Saw, Saw they did go to CG blood, and they did have some effects that didn't look so good. In Jigsaw, the scene where the guy gets, he looks like basically a Demogorgon from Stranger Things. He gets his head, split in several different ways, and the effect to me, the effect looks pretty bad. But I think movies like that, even a franchise that was built on really intense traps and gore and stuff like that, they they try to cheap out by using CG. It just doesn't work. Um, in some instances, it's good. So when you're like, in an alien, like in I don't know, like when you're doing like a quick action scene, like aliens and stuff like that, and the gore is not like bloody or whatever. I think it can favor there, but when it comes to people and things like that, I think practical is the best way to go. But people insist on using CG because it's easier and they can don't spend a ton of money on effects. Because if you do a shot where somebody gets their head blown off, like in Scanners, a guy is just sitting there and he gets his head, blown off, and that was like a one take shot. Like if they mess that up, then it's done effect. That's a pretty expensive fail. But in the end of the movie, it looks great. Another movie where they did that was Maniac, where the guy takes the shotgun and blows Tom Savini's head off, which he does the effects for Maniac. He blows the guy's head off, and it's obviously a dummy. And movies where some of the effects, even though they mix CG and and gore, and they're in real life, effects. Rambo, Rambo 2008 with Stallone. It was the movie that he directed, and some of the effects, although there was obviously CG, like they was using like dummies and stuff like that. They were using like dummies and actual, people getting their head blown off and everything, and it just looks fantastic. Like it looked real. It didn't look like you see in like the Predator that came out not too long ago, where the guy's legs get chopped off after they put the shield over the ship, and he gets his legs chopped off, and it's obviously CG and everything, and it's just an easier way to do it. And yeah, I agree with Alan. Like gore in movies are getting better, especially because I believe it's the easiest. It's one of the easiest things to make when it comes to movies and stuff like that. That can look really good when done right. Even low budget stuff. Um, People like a lot of indie things, are getting these small budgets, but what they can do with it is fantastic. Um, I'm trying to think of things that was gore in horror movies. I guess talk about the Hellraiser. Dead Alive was considered one of the goriest movies ever made. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th. Several of the kills in Friday the 13th are extremely graphic. Like the one where the guy gets chopped down the middle. He's doing the handstand, and Jason just chops him down the middle. Then he gets shoved in the raptors above the rafters above the house, and that kill is pretty. It's pretty graphic, and I'm I don't know. It's definitely interesting how they did it. I don't know how they did it. But it looks good. It looks like the guy was actually like split in half. Um, Movies where it's it's sort of you know uneasy to watch gore and several things. Caligula, cult movie, Caligula. It's pretty graphic. Like a guy gets his like guts basically ripped out of him and everything, and just a lot of disgusting, just a lot of just disgusting things. Um, definitely, definitely interesting to talk about. Um, Italian horror movies are pretty graphic. In Suspiria, like the girl gets cut with the barbed wire, and it like leaves the cuts on her face and everything, and um it just looks fantastic. Italians when they made when they make their movies, they're based on giallo is the category, and it's what they can imagine, and what they usually come up with is really really good and intense. And if it wasn't for those like giallo movies, then I don't think the Italian film industry, I don't think people like Lucio Fulci and things like that. Uh, Movies, I can think of a modern movie that was pretty graphic for some of it. Terrifier, definitely an intense movie where the girl's like hanging upside down, and it's just like slicing her and everything. It's very unsettling. Um, Things like I said, the Green Inferno. I mentioned gross out horror. The couple of the ones that I want to mention, the Human Centipede. The Human Centipede. The concept is interesting, but the execution and what they show is disgusting, and I don't know why anybody would want to watch it, but people do apparently. Um, and gross out horror, yeah, for some things it can be good, um, but and like if your whole movie is based on that, then you're gonna make people upset. They like horror that's like, somebody gets killed and stuff like that. That's not disgusting. Where there's like their boils and stuff like that, or they're having their pokes and stuff, and like pus comes out, and it's just nasty, and it makes you more uncomfortable than it does seeing the guy get his head cut off. Um, yeah. Um, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, Gore has definitely gotten really good in the last couple of years. I mean, it's gotten good for a long time. Like a lot of people, a lot of movies have been made by, really good effects. People like Screaming Mad George, Greg Nicotero, Tom Savini, uh, Heather Langenkamp, her husband. They have an effects team, or they have an effects company that they use when they made Cabin in the Woods, and some of the effects in that are pretty good. They did the effects on like the families and things like that. Although a lot of the blood is, obviously CG for several reasons, but it's mainly to save money, and that's all they're trying to do. Those companies, at the end of the day, they got to make money, and they'll do whatever they have to do. It just is what it is. I haven't seen the platform on Netflix. I'll have to check it out. Um, I've seen. Oh, I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything. I don't think I've really watched a lot of horror movies on Netflix. Um, Movies where I thought was kind of unsettling that I didn't really care for. I mean, I cared for it, but I mean, I didn't. I thought it was just kind of excessive. Um, Movie in Hot Fuzz, um, where the guy gets his head crushed by the steeple and everything, and the people found dead. But I can imagine that's how stuff happens in real life. People, detectives and stuff who worked on homicide could probably tell you some pretty grisly things that have happened to them. Um, but it's there's a scene where the guy gets like stabbed from the bottom of the mouth out his mouth with a steeple. He falls in like a small miniature and stabs himself. And this that whole effect was just kind of, it made you kind of uneasy. Um, but no, I haven't seen the platform. I'll definitely have to check it out sometime. Um, I think this is gonna be a short episode. I'm sorry I couldn't have Doc here with me to have some more commentary, but I hope this was good. Um, I I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you, Alan, for joining in and chatting with me. Always nice to hear from you. Tell Doc I said hi, and hopefully I'll catch him. Not next week. We're gonna do the second and the fourth week, starting in February. So the next one, the next episode of the Hollywood Morgue, you will see will be in. Hold on, let me look. The next episode you will see will be on the 9th, and then after that it will be on the 23rd, on Tuesday, 10:30, same time, Central Standard Time. Um, that's how it is. Hopefully, Doc will be there with me. Thank you, Alan, for joining in, and thank you for anybody else who watched this episode. You guys are awesome, and I'll see you on the next one.